Take a bow, play the part of a lonely, lonely heart. Say goodbye to the world you thought you lived in, to the world you thought you lived in. I tried to live alone, but lonely is so lonely alone. So human as I am, I had to give up my defenses. So I smiled and tried to meet it, to let myself let go. Take a bow, play the part of a lonely, lonely heart. Say goodbye to the world you thought you lived in, to the world you thought you lived in, to the world you thought you lived in. Say goodbye to the world you thought you lived in. Say goodbye.
drank champagne with kings and queens. The politicians praised my name. But those were someone else's dreams, the pitfalls of the man I became. For years and years, I chased their cheers, a crazy speed of always needing more. But when I stop and see you here, I remember who all this was for. From now on, these eyes will not be blinded by the lights. From now on,
give me your attention, baby. I gotta tell you a little something about yourself. You're wonderful, flawless, ooh, you're a sexy lady. But you walk around here like you wanna be someone else. Oh, I know that you don't know it, but you're fine, so fine.
Fine, so fine.
Oh, girl, I'm gonna show you that you're mine, oh mine.
Mine, oh mine.
Treasure, that is what you are.
Honey,
You're my golden star. You know you make my wish come true. If you let me treasure you. If you let me treasure. Oh, oh, oh.
You are my treasure. You are my treasure. You are my treasure. Yeah, you are my treasure. You are my treasure. You are my treasure. Yeah, you are my treasure. You are my treasure.
Oh, oh, oh.
You and I, we've been through it all. Is it time to say goodbye? Dry your eye.
We have been together so long. Is it time to let go? Apart we grow.
Soon we will know. You are the reason to go. I'm living. I need to try things and be on my own. We'll always be friends. We'll keep our distance. We'll be together from afar forever.
I've waited so long to know if your hand will take me home. Your next move is always slow. Now I can't wait anymore. Don't wanna go, don't wanna stay, don't wanna make a change. Don't wanna show, don't wanna cheat, don't wanna hesitate. Don't wanna hold, don't wanna bust, don't wanna raise. Don't wanna fold, don't wanna bluff, I kinda like this game. All that I think about day and night is having you in my dream life. I've hit the jackpot right. I've hit the jackpot right. All that I think about day and night is having you in my dream life. I've hit the jackpot right. I've hit the jackpot right. You're faking like you're on top. Why can't we just split the pot? We're suited, the dealer's not. This showdown, oh, it'll never stop. Don't wanna go, don't wanna stay, don't wanna make a change.
We'll be winning like a pot got hot.
Don't wanna show, don't wanna cheat, don't wanna hesitate.
We'll be winning like the cash go rain.
Don't wanna hold, don't wanna bust, don't wanna raise.
We'll be winning like a pot got
Don't
hot.
wanna fold, don't wanna bust, I'm gonna win this game.
We'll be winning like a do it again. Hey!
All that I think about day and night is having you in my dream life. I hit the jackpot right. I'ma hit it, I'ma hit it. All that I think about day and night is having you in my dream life. I hit the jackpot right. I'ma hit it, jackpot. We be winning like the pot got hot. We be winning like the cash gon' rain. We be winning, we gon' do it again. Jackpot. We be winning like the pot got hot. We be winning like the cash gon' rain. Gonna do it again. Gonna do it, gonna do it, gonna do it again. All that I think about day and night like the pot got hot. We be winning like the cash gon' rain. Hit the jackpot. I hit the jackpot. All that I think about day and night is having you in my dream life. I hit the jackpot right. I hit the jackpot right. All that I think about jackpot is having you. Jackpot. All that I think about jackpot is having you. Jackpot.
I am in love with what we are, not what we should be. And I am starstruck with every part of this whole story. So if it's just a night, the animal inside, let it live and die. Like it's the end of time, like everything inside, let it live and die. This is our last chance, give me your hands, 'cause our world is spinning at the speed of
And for 3 hours, you should come watch. It is
You're singing for
gonna be
3
great.
hours.
I'm
That's
singing for
fantastic.
3 hours, hopefully with a little bit of break time.
Wow, that's amazing.
But yeah, 3 hours, just me and my guitar, and yeah.
Have you got a long enough repertoire for 3 hours of new material?
I got close to 30 songs. Close to
Wow.
30 songs.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
Okay, I've got the thumbs up from Lita and Colin, so thank you guys. Okay, with us we have Jean-Louis Bleau here, and Jean-Louis is the interim director of the Mount Royal University Conservatory, as well as artistic director of several prominent choirs. Is that fair to say? Yeah, and a respected figure in our community of choral leaders. So thank you so much for being here, Jean-Louis.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Coelho, who's the president and CEO of Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Calgary. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, the new gig. Ken is also an active voice and volunteer in our city, and is a Youth Singers of Calgary alumni, parent, and spouse. And I should say also Jean-Louis is a former staff member here at Youth Singers. We have Karen Gallagher-Burt. Karen is the Director of Philanthropy and Stewardship with the Canadian Mental Health Association, and is also a singer for karaoke, I believe you said.
Only for fun. Only for fun.
You should see the costumes.
And we have Mitch Gorman, who is a student at MacEwan University studying music. He's a musician and performer, is what I meant to say. He's also a varsity athlete, formerly at Mount Royal University, volleyball player.
Thank you for having me.
Great, it's wonderful to have you here. And finally, last but not least, Jonathan Love, who's the Executive Director of the Friends of the Alberta Jubilee Auditorium Society, also a Youth Singer alumni, staff alumni as well.
True.
And thank you very much for sharing your talents and being here today.
You'll
Thanks
notice
for
that
bringing
she
us in.
didn't mention two of us are in the heebie-jeebies.
Oh, who cares?
It's very important. We wanted to keep the quality of this panel pretty high.
Really
Love that
highbrow.
moment,
That was awesome.
yeah. Dodge that one, Megan.
I won't say which two. Oh, the definitions.
Oh, super, fantastic, thank you. So yeah, so for those of you joining us online today, we are streaming this event and it will be recorded and available to watch later. We did a little bit of housekeeping off the top where we acknowledged the traditional territories of the Indigenous people. We also talked about our understanding of men includes all men, trans men, all ages and stages, with space for non-binary and gender fluid people as well. And we talked about how our panel will be focused on men's health in music, not about, but we did acknowledge that there are issues of misogyny and male privilege in informal and formal music institutions. So there's the recap. Okay, I hopefully will stop talking soon. Thank you guys so much for being here and for joining us online. I'm gonna actually ask Karen to start us off. Karen, if you could share with us what you know about men's mental health and how singing and being a musician can maybe impact that.
Oh, easily, thank you. So I'm fortunate. I have a master's in social work, a graduate degree, and I work at Canadian Mental Health. And we see all kinds of folks who are very much on a continuum with their mental health journey. And I'm glad that we're talking mental health because often it's always about mental illness. So when we think about mental health, we all have it, 100% of us. We all have a brain, hopefully, which is part of our body. So it's really health. When we think about music and mental health, often it comes about as treatment. So you know that there's animal therapy, there's play therapy, there's music therapy. So there's power in music for the individual in that therapeutic work. But what we don't talk about is the community that's created when you're involved in activities around music, whether it be playing an instrument, performing, singing, even musical theater, whatever that might be for you. So the number one thing that we talk about to prevent mental illness, to take care of yourself, and this applies across genders, is really about how do you have a sense of connection, a sense of community, a sense of belonging, and all of that leads to a sense of hope. So for me, when we talk about music and anyone who might participate, we have to talk about the value of that community and that sense that comes together. There's something about the power of creation
And I think the sound is so important to us in our sensory side that those things together are fantastic. So for me, it's always about what kind of space and place can we create where we can come together to use the power of our voices. And I know during the pandemic, for me, it's been online music and not only observing and listening, but joining little groups online that where we're doing that wonderful singing together and pulling people in out of that isolation, that loneliness. And I think there's a power in that, but also a power in the length of time, because if you play hockey, you have a limited time. And I think a lot of men focus predominantly on sports. I'm not saying all, but generally many do. But when you focus on something that's a different kind of skill, you can do it forever, absolutely forever. And I think that's the power of voice and singing and connection.
Thank you, Karen. And I'll just invite our panelists to please jump in and tag on and add to what she said.
Sure.
I thought that was awesome, Karen.
Woo!
Why, thank you, John.
Yeah. Well, I can jump in and just sort of say the power of community is one of the things that's always drawn me to arts organizations and groups while growing up. And I think it's sort of an important place if we're talking about men in these types of situations, and we've got a few here. We're talking about an awkward time for all of us, especially as we're growing up as youth and an adolescence that way. It's a time where we all think we're alone. We all think we're the awkward one. We lose confidence, and in the power of the group, there's a safe space for that. There's a safety, and as you said, there's a hope in some opportunity to work together on creating something beautiful, creating something that you can participate in. And I can remember, we've got people here from the Calgary Boys Choir, and that was my start. And I can remember the excitement around joining your pals every week for rehearsals. But then I remember going into a 4-part choir with Mount Royal Youth Choir. The first time I walked in to, what was it, Y309? No, what is it? Upstairs? What's the room? Q309A. Q309A. Walked in there with David Ferguson. And basically, I think he knew that he had me hooked once I saw, listened to that 4-part harmony, that chord that sort of sent things soaring, and I just thought, well, I've got to kind of be a part of that. Yeah. But it's a difficult thing.
Yeah, you can't create that alone.
No.
I mean, there's power in a person that can sing by themselves, but I think there's something pure about a group that sings together, and I think we don't have enough of that in our lives. We don't have enough opportunities to connect anymore that way.
Agreed.
Well, and I think in choral music, actually, there's the opportunity for, if you're having a bad day, to allow yourself to have a bad day, because everyone else in your section will actually kind of carry that part. It
Been
doesn't
doing
rely
it for
completely
years.
on
Oh,
you.
yeah. Cover me, baby.
It's not like you're past a puck, and if you miss the shot, everyone's looking at you. If you actually drop a couple notes, people aren't going to look down on you or criticize you for that. And so there's that strong sense of community support that comes with singing, especially in groups.
I think that that support aspect of the choir side of things is so important, and there's something like about music that you said that kind of brings you into like a different world, almost. And when you have like all those people doing the same thing that you are and producing such an amazing sound, I think everybody that's been in a choral experience has experienced that moment of like, whoa, like I just got shivers.
Yeah, the goosebumps. That it's just like, oh my.
It's so powerful, and like it can't be described with words until you really experience it. So
I'm going to share something that I didn't think I would share today, but I'm going to share it. In 2017, I was having a challenge with my mental health. And John will remember this because we're in a band together. And we were at Mount Royal, actually, and we were performing for a group called, we were the special guest at a concert held by the Calgary Creative Arts Ensemble. I think they're a jazz sort of outfit in town. They make amazing music. And they had welcomed us to be part of a show that they were doing at a church nearby. We were doing a rehearsal. And what I remember about it is I was in a dark place. I was in a really challenging place. And I came to Mount Royal. That was probably the first time I'd left the house in a week. I was wearing my sweatpants. Wasn't feeling very good about myself. And that was an amazing moment because the four of us got up and we were singing and we were playing with these amazing musicians, and something flipped for me. Just for a little while. I went back to that dark place for a little while and then got some help, and that was incredible. But there was nothing else that would have pulled me out of my basement. But that did.
So we need more gigs, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everyone. I'm getting emotional over here. So yeah, I think that many of us have experienced the benefits, the very positive benefits. I know that choral singing, and I'm happy to see my director here, Jason, welcome. The choral singing is definitely part of my mental health wellness strategy, and keeps me connected to people that I care about, engages my thinking, my sense of humor, and then artistic expression. And so why, we're noticing at Youth Singers that we have less boys and less men registering year over year. And I think that some other organizations in the city are experiencing the same thing. We know how positive choral singing and group singing is, as well as playing in bands and things like this, where there's more than one of you and you're together and you've got each other's back, can be for men. And so why aren't they here? I wonder if if we're ready to jump into that, or if we're wondering where men are at right now, and young men in terms of taking care of themselves or seeing this as a priority. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I was going to mention, we were talking about resumes before, and how when you write your resume, you have those other skills that you put on there, and sometimes it's horseback riding. And
It's always horseback.
I'm really good, Karen.
and I know for me, I always say that, I'm a specialist in coffee and wine. I'm not sure where that applies in a job, but I am. But I think about the other skills you learn as a performer and as someone working with your voice. And my mother would never believe that I make a living talking, because I spent my life being told to be quiet. And yet, as someone who had no problem sitting in front of an audience, no problem participating, speaking to thousands of people, I didn't understand that at all. And I realized that that's actually a skill. It hasn't come intrinsically, even though I'm a last child. I'm a fourth child, so I need to make some noise so people hear me. But being able to speak to people, and I think it continues with singing, is not just a skill, but there's so many side effects for that in your life, in your confidence levels, and your ability to be out there, and shifting your personality for brief periods of time. If you're an introvert, you can pull some of those skills out when necessary. And lots of folks I know perform really well, and they get off the stage and they're really quiet and they're more reserved. And then I know other people like Ken and John, that's not even close. But I think that there's so many extra skills that you pick up from that beyond the community, but those people are in your lives as well too, so it's kind of fantastic.
Can I pick up on that?
Yep.
I've had a really weird career, and for a while I was a TV host. I hosted a newscast for young people that ran across the country. And I mean, the glamour of that job of wearing makeup every day and having a clothing allowance was not half as interesting as being in the edit suite. If you've ever been making TV or radio, or you spend a lot of time taking a bunch of stuff you put and cutting it down so it's manageable for the medium. And I remember sitting with a guy, his name is Andy Zold. Hey, Andy, if you're watching. Andy was an amazing editor. And what made him a great editor for television, in the public broadcaster, was a completely different set of skills. But what made him an amazing editor was the fact that he was a musician. He was a guitar player, and he had played for many years in bands growing up and as a kid and stuff. And he hadn't played in years. But the way he would construct pieces of news or TV or shows that we'd put together was so musical. I loved editing with Andy because it was almost like being in a recording studio making an album, and we'd get to do that. And he directly tied that notion of his professional career to the music that he'd done as a young person. So I agree with you. There's so many skills. I've had so many opportunities in my professional career to work with timing and work with big audiences or small audiences, or understand where the silence should be,
Yes.
which is something we learn in music. Those are the kind of things that some might call them soft skills. I call them very marketable. And I know John's built a career that way. Faked
True.
it for years.
I was going to say, I'm a professional faker. I have a drama degree. This is something that I will mention from a youth singer's perspective. Some of us here are from Act 3. As Malcolm will remember, I coined the Act 3 title because we thought at that time it was important to include some of the acting in some of the performances that the youth singers were doing at the time, so that everybody could be triple threat. So, thank you. But actually, just getting back to Karen's point, the nice thing about singing is, and the nice thing about being involved in any sort of extracurricular type of ensemble, is it gives you a chance to be someone other than who you are, or it gives you a chance to be more who you are than who you are to your classmates, who you are to your family. It gives you a chance to, explore some of the interests that you have, try on these personas and voices. Mitch and I were just talking about different musical styles. If you're singing operatically, that's a different voice than if you're singing jazz. If you're singing chorally, there's a different blend, and you have to conform to whatever the sound of the ensemble is, and you may find bits of yourself in all of these things and share that with everybody. And when you're going through the trenches of that self-exploration together, you certainly come out with a lot of great allies.
So we're all seduced by this. I think everybody in this room goes, "Yeah, it's awesome."
But where are
as
the
you said,
dudes?
where are they? So Mitch, you're atypical.
You're a dude.
Yeah.
And
I am a
an
dude.
athlete.
Yeah.
And an athlete. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's such a broad scope that I think people my age and younger guys look at music.
Did you see that he pointed to me when he said younger guys?
I think it was the gentleman
No,
over here
it's
somewhere.
right up high, Mitch. Thank you. All right.
Anyways, young people look at music and they I feel like they have a hard time associating it with themselves. I can't say that because I've experienced music throughout my entire life. I grew up singing in a Grand Prairie Boys Choir for my entire life, and at the same time I was an athlete. So I got a little bit of the best of both worlds, where lots of people just go strictly to sports. I think music is so special once you get into it, and I'm not exactly sure why men are so afraid to get into it. I don't know if that's the right word to use or anything, but I think I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I think fear is part of it. I think there's identity stereotypes associated with being involved in music that are difficult for, especially in North America. Like if you look at Eastern European countries, there's a wonderful male choral singing traditions there, but that's not something that we have here in North America. And so I think that's part of the problem is it's an identity fear that people have, and it's not something that is easy to approach unless you've been actually kind of coaxed into it at an early age, and then it's something that you will have likely carried through. But I mean, for a choral director, I have tips.
All right.
As I was mentioning
Okay.
to Megan before that I have the opposite problem in my choir at Mount Royal, in that I only have 4 sopranos. I have 8 basses, 5 tenors, and I don't have enough.
I think this is
soprano
the
alto
first time this has happened in North America. Congratulations.
We're
John.
recording this, right?
Yeah, this is unbelievable.
and it's great.
Yeah.
There's huge diversity within the male voice types that I have in that choir, but a lot of that is having the confidence as an individual to actually be involved in something that society kind of maybe has this stereotypical view of.
So here's a quick question on that, Jael. How long has it taken to build up to those numbers? Because there's a retention and there's a cycle that choirs go through. And I know that what ends up happening is, you get to the tour year or whatever, and everybody's there, and then afterwards there's a mass exodus, and then we're all looking for, all of these vocal parts. But that's an incredible, number.
I think especially for choirs, it comes down to repertoire. And I think the problem that directors sometimes have is that your male voices are usually not as advanced as the soprano alto voices, because they've probably been taking voice lessons or they come with more experience. So what we do sometimes as choral directors is we will kind of dumb down, I hate to say that, the tenor bass parts or collapse them into a baritone part, and that doesn't create enough challenge. And I think everybody that comes to music, I know the best experiences that I have In Malcolm's choir, I will never forget this, was There Shall a Star, a Mendelssohn piece. The pieces that are easy to do are great because they pull you in, they get you right away, but they do not sustain your attention. And it's
Sugar
the pieces,
high.
right? But it's the pieces like There Shall a Star that actually turned me into a choral director. I was like, wow, what is this magic? Like that was the shiver experience that I had. It was in rehearsal, and all of a sudden I'm wanting more of this. But sometimes because male voices may not be as advanced, we always seem to pull back. And I think you really need to reject that and push the male singers with the repertoire, and also repertoire that's engaging for male voices. Sometimes it could be very simple bass lines, but I mean, music where there's shouts, stomps, as well as involved harmonies is what I think we need to actually push more for, especially with male singers. Challenge them. They want to be challenged.
Can I say one thing about the notion of fear? Because it's an interesting one. In my previous career, I used to work at the YMCA. And one of the things that we did at the Y was really focused on, especially for little kids, on the notion of physical literacy. So traditional literacy, numeracy, you want to teach kids how to read and write, and there's a whole, I don't have to tell the teacher on the stage, there's a whole regimen on how to do that. Physical literacy is just, I'm oversimplifying, but if a kid when they're 6 or 7 or 3 or 4 can't throw a ball or skip or jump or walk backwards or do some of those basic skills, chances are when they're 50, like me, they're not going to be playing recreational sports, or they're not going to be doing some of those other physical things because they've never actually figured out the body discipline to do it. I think there's something to be said that way for music as well, for singing. And if you don't, how many times have we all heard, oh, I could never carry a tune in a bucket? Like, people just, they self-select out because they think, oh, if I'm not Jean-Louis Bleau and I have not done this for 5 years. I don't know how old you are, so I'm just making
Yeah, good work, good work. Great assumption.
But if they haven't done it for a while, then there's no way I could do. Now, I know You Singers breaks that mold. You have older divisions, and you have people, you welcome them at all ages and stages, as you say. But I think there is a perception that if I haven't done this, which is insane because it's a human thing.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like singing and making music is part of the human experience. And when especially at Christmas time, when we sing these carols that have been sung for hundreds of years, and you know that like you are connected, like in a physical, emotional way with other humans for hundreds of years who've been iterating these same sounds. Like it's very, very powerful. If I may, we have a couple of comments from the internet that I'd like to address.
Yes.
So one of them is that we need to stop thinking of basses and tenors as male voice parts. Females can sing these too. So I know You Singers has a line out right now. Basses, baritones, tenors, altos, sopranos, and questioning. Come find your voice here at You Singers. But I wonder, as we set off the top, we're looking at men to include all kinds of men. And Jean-Louis, did you have any comment to that?
Well, actually, I should. I will say male voice parts because I guess that's the stereotype that we've become accustomed to. I should actually point out that when I was in university chorus with Malcolm, I sang alto, and it was interesting because that was always the girls' parts, and so it was. But I just, kind of like, I'm just, one of the gals, I guess. But when I was talking about Artio, actually, in Artio, the 5 tenors that I have. 2 of them I identify as they, and 2 of them identify as female, and 1 identifies as male. And so when I'm working with a choir, I actually do not say men's parts or soprano. I refer to the voice parts: soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And that comes from my own experience singing alto. But within the context of this conversation, I think I just shifted to something that was more. I guess.
Sure, but I think there's information for choral directors out there looking to recruit men and the lower voice parts to sort of understand how we can think about changing voices and trans voices and making space.
I think this is relatively new too, because I'm mindful of the fact that I had 1 tenor in one of my choirs, female tenor, who shifted to another choir and originally were rejected, because that choral director actually didn't feel that a female tenor would blend well. Things have changed. That person is actually now in that choir. but I mean, the issue of for me, the issue of trans voices and how to work with trans voices is something that's really important for choral directors. And I've made the mistake early on in my career where a person had come to the Calgary Men's Chorus, which I was working with, and wanted to audition and join. And as a director, you immediately kind of go to defaulting to where you hear their voice sit. That's kind of, we all want to place the voices where they should be based on the range that they have, but we sometimes forget that for certain people, their identity is very much part of maybe the gender of that voice part. So when we're saying male voice parts, for some people it is very important that they be part of a male voice part. And with the men's chorus, unfortunately, I had assumed that the person's voice was tenor because that's what I heard, but that wasn't acceptable for them. And so when the issue came up with another choir and some directors were actually debating it, the directors had indicated that that person who was transitioning from female to male, that their voice was still alto and they should be in the alto section. And I raised serious objections to that because of my own experience, because it's not, at that point, it's not about whether the blend of the choir is going to be good. The most important thing that you can do, going back to mental health and the sense of community, is that you give that person a home in a place where they want to be, where they feel comfortable and they want to be accepted, and that is and where they want to see their own identity manifest. That's the most important thing, to beyond whether or not it will affect the balance or blend of the choir, or whether they'll be even heard. When people are transitioning from female to male and they're going through T, and I do have one singer in my choir who actually was started as an alto, and then they now transitioned to from alto to tenor and now to bass. They kind of moved all the way through, even if their voice is not projecting in the part that they want to be identified with. That doesn't matter. It is more important to actually honor the individual.
The community is more important, and the belonging.
Yeah.
How they feel.
The individual sense of community,
Right.
that individual, yeah.
Right.
I was going to add on, when you were talking about attracting young men and boys, one of the things that struck for me is that I've had the privilege of raising 50 children. And as I watched many of these kids at various stages in life, you learn snippets about certain developmental stages. And when you hit about 12, 13, 14, whether it doesn't matter how you identify, but when you reach that age and your identity becomes, malleable and you're trying to figure out who you are, well, that's when young boys have the biggest voice change. And so when you need to find your voice in life, for them, they're also trying to find their voice.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of embarrassment that comes with that. People make a lot of jokes with them and a lot of things about their voice cracking. And my best friend is currently transitioning F to M and is on T now. And he told me the other day, he was saying, you have no idea how hard this is with what's happening within my vocal cords. And we were joking about it because he was joking about it and I went along. And he said, you know what, the change in my sound. And I said, well, how's that affected you? And there were obviously a multitude of answers, but one of the big ones was, I don't feel like I speak well anymore, let alone could I sing. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting, just that change, because he's 48 years old. He's always had that more feminine voice, softer, and now it's different, and it's quite fascinating from his perspective.
Well, how many people have recorded their voicemail and heard it back?
We hate it.
How many people love their voice when they do that? Anyone? No, because we hear ourselves differently in our heads, right? And that's, our identity, voice-wise, is defined that way. And for that shift to happen,
100%.
is a huge identity shift. And that's something that happens naturally to all men or boys to men, if I can coin a phrase. But it's a real, it sort of rocks your identity a little bit. And so, you don't have stable ground to be on. And so that's why it's important to utilize these types of communities to have that support structure.
So a question we had come in was, many men growing up, their involvement in music might have had trauma associated with bullying and stereotyping.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we reach out and invite them back in? And so I guess I wonder, I can think offhand of just a handful of experiences right away of, yeah, I think it's back to this fear piece and
So I can
Yeah.
I can maybe add something to that, because I won't say I had bullying growing up, because I've been singing for a long time. One of my other bandmates, Chris Herard, he was in high school with me. We were at Bishop Grandin, now called I can't remember the name of the school, but Grandin River, no, something like. Anyway, it's got a new name, which is better. Anyway, we were in grade 10. He was in the choir, and I was stuck outside the door waiting for my buddy because he would rehearse every lunch hour. So the teacher coaxed us inside, and it changed my life. But it was interesting because when we would walk through the hallways at that high school, there was a hallway called Jock Hall. I don't know, every high school has that hallway. And the smoking doors, that was a different place. I didn't go there either. But Jock Hall. And I was often worried walking through that hallway because I was in the choir. The choir room was just to the left of Jock Hall. To the point where, thank goodness, in my mind, I was also in the band. And I played drums. So when I walked through that hallway, I'd carry my drumsticks. Because drumsticks are cool, and being in the choir is not. And that was my hedge against getting beat up. It's interesting that those are perceptions. We've leaned into it a little bit at the Heebie-Jeebies, because what is geekier than four guys doing comedy a cappella? Like, I mean, really.
Yep.
But we've leaned into that, and we've sort of owned it, and have been in many sort of, you almost call them male-dominated situations. I can think of gigs we've done where literally it's a corporate gig, and it's, plumbers, or it's, accountants. At one point, by the way, all the accountants were not women. It was amazing how many all-guy gigs we've done.
Then we played Cowboys that one time.
But we would walk into those situations and say, you know what? Let's own this, and let's get them conga lining like there's nobody's business. And that was a victory for us. How many corporate gigs where we got up and said, we're going to get them by the third song? And it didn't matter who was sitting staring at you like, what am I doing here? This is the Banff Springs, and you goose shouldn't be here. But we've owned it, and we've leaned into it. But that takes courage, because I'm still that kid walking through the hallway hoping my drumsticks don't get me beat up.
Well, it takes the right team, too. And what a lot of people don't know about the Heebie-Jeebies in particular is we always wanted to be rock singers, because rock singers are way cooler when it comes to that. And I think that that's kind of one of those things that attracts younger males at that time. I remember actually, it's one of the most cinematic experiences of my life. I was in grade 8, and I had a pickup band, and we were in the talent show, the Battle of the Bands, in our school, and we sang AC/DC's "Shook Me All Night Long," and it was awesome because we were rock stars in our own minds. We were rocking our school gym, and I will say that the night before, everyone has their amps and they turn them up to 11 and that type of thing, but nobody has the microphone for the singer. So someone who's chorally trained, I had an okay voice. I had the support, so I could, he was a fast machine. So I had that going the whole time. This is no problem. You do the full rehearsal for a couple of hours just to make sure you've got all the licks right. And then the next day, I think, at the end of the song, after the big guitar solo, he's got that, yeah, you shook me all night long, right? And my voice changed right then and there. And I'll never forget that. I wanted to die. I walked off stage curled up in a ball by the crash pad, because you talk about Jock Hall. Every day, every class change for the next week and a half. And you're just like, I was trying to take this stuff and rock out with this. And the difficulty is, I loved it. I still loved it. And it took a little while to get back to it.
Courage, yeah.
It took some courage, and it took the right people to have the open arms to, bring me back in and sort of forget that as sort of a cinematic memory.
I really liked what Ken said about owning it, because it comes back to your identity. And like growing up, I always faced people bugging me about being in choir, especially being an athlete, and I was like, well, that's who I am. That's like, I love music. That's why I want to be here. And I remember it was grade 12, and I had to miss a very, very important volleyball tournament for my final Christmas concert, I think it was.
Nice.
Yeah, and
Isn't this the plot of American Pie from
I think
1998?
Hey, keep going.
so anyways, this Christmas concert was my graduation concert for the Grand Prairie Boys Choir. And being on the volleyball team, I was the captain of this volleyball team, and I was an important part of this volleyball team. And everybody on the volleyball team hated that I was missing this tournament, but I did it because music is who I am, and that was part of me, and I wanted to be at music. I wanted to be there with my team and with my family
Absolutely.
of the choir. So, yeah.
That's awesome, man.
So I think, yeah, we've heard about, but you got involved as a young person.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't have to overcome some of those fears. Like you'd already had that shiver experience, I guess.
Yeah.
It's what I heard you say earlier. And so I'll go back to what JL was saying, that repertoire. Like how can we access young men, get them excited? Like
AC/DC.
in education, we talk about the instructional edge. So it has to be easy enough that you can be successful to some point and get that positive feedback, but it also has to be challenging enough to move you forward, and then you put that harder work in and you get that positive feedback loop that will sustain you for longer. So when you have your many changed men's voice, tenor-based voices, what does your repertoire look like that you think you've brought them in?
My repertoire looks very strange, actually. And
It's
maybe
very
that's,
eclectic.
Yeah.
And wonderful because of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it totally eclectic, and I do that on purpose. I think everyone loves the beautiful lyrical songs, and that's great. But having something that's rhythmic, having something that's driving, having something that actually, I hate to say it, but plays into a male stereotype is great. And then also having something, there's a great composer, Canadian composer, Katerina Gimmon, who's came and visited RTO and worked on her piece, Elements. And the fire movement is full of stomping, shouting, laughing, screaming, as well as strong rhythmic drive, and just using the voice in a different way. So it's not same. The repertoire that I have, it's very, very eclectic, and it really pulls on the voice, which is pedagogically a wonderful experience because you're not asking a person to blend the same way for every piece. With Fire in Gimmon's piece, she wants a bright sound, so you're asking the choir to shift to a really nasal sound, and I love doing that with choral repertoire, finding something that actually means that I have to get the choir to sing in a different way. And it creates a sense of identity shift where there's so much to this. And after the choir performs like stomping, clapping, shouting, Fire, and then shifts to something like North, which is a pop song, people, the friends aren't coming up to them going, oh, that was cool. Friends are going, oh, wow, that was amazing. Like, how did you guys do that? That was so cool.
You know what, for me, I'm thinking back to the time when I started in music as a teenager. I'm overgeneralizing, but a lot of young teenage boys or men, they like danger, they like risk, they like adventure. And how many times in music has that been an element? I mean, we always talk about the heebie-jeebies, 4 voices without a net.
Yep.
Because
or we do all our own stunts,
Yeah.
which is tough in COVID. Singing was very verboten.
I think we were literally the most dangerous thing ever.
Take that, Tom
But when it
Cruise.
comes down to it, it's about that risk taking. And if you can sort of almost market it in that way, that you're trying something that's, don't use the word vulnerable maybe, that might not be exactly what they're, but that's what it's coming. It's risk and it's adventure and it's trying something and it's filling a space and it's being seen. Not every kid, not every boy wants to be seen. But boy, was I one of them, right? I played the
is.
drums, and I didn't want to play the drums because the drums were in the back, and the singer was in the front. And that changed everything.
Yep.
One of the things that just triggered for me was one of the, after RTO did a concert, somebody came up to me and commented that the choir, the singers, were fearless. It's not something you hear in a choral concert where somebody comes up and goes, "Wow, that was a fearless performance," that's a badge of honor, and that's something that resonated with all the singers. Maybe not so much the sopranos. This might be why I have difficulty with soprano voices.
Well, and I think, and JL's a great example. Malcolm is another great example of someone who's taken an ensemble and given them something different to think about. Growing up, I can remember in my Mount Royal Youth Choir experience, you go through a few very classical pieces, things that you learn a little bit about tone, you learn a little bit about blend, all of that type of thing, and then you experience R. Murray Schafer, and it all just goes out the window and it reframes in front of you like the Matrix, and you're just like, whoa, what is this? And again, Mitch and I talking about jazz, this is what we're talking about. There is no net in that type of opportunity, and when that type of challenge or that kind of danger comes in and you're in a safe place to explore it, there really is nothing better. And it becomes a communication piece. It becomes a conversation that you have with your entire team and the audience. And actually, Ken brought up something when we were chatting about this too. I will say that the audience piece is a big, big factor. I think when rehearsal's wonderful. I believe in the process. I believe in the exploration. But the minute we get to showcase it and share it in a different way, I think that's a challenge that a lot of young men really rise to. And so I really like it when a lot of younger performing groups have an active gig schedule.
Yeah. There's lots of ways in. One of the other ones I was thinking about is music is math. I am terrible in my head at math, but I'm not terrible at music. And that actually gave me confidence to pass Math 30. No, barely pass Math 30. However, but the whole notion of if I can't do math, but I can do music, and suddenly you're actually doing math. You're just doing it in a different way.
As long as it's divisible by 4, you're fine.
But there's a lot, it sounds silly, but there's a lot of parents that really want their kids to pass math. And you know what? There's a way into that. There's a path into that, and it's through the choir room.
Yeah, I think that also, music used to be, anyway, in Western society, part of a well-rounded classical education, in its own right, and also as a way to just support being a good human. And, we sort of see how that value may have drifted, and arts programs are the first on the chopping block. Mm-hmm. I would like to say that when we all kind of came in and our guests started arriving and Malcolm Edwards arrived, we all wondered, why are we here when he's in the room as an expert on this topic to some extent. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Malcolm, and give you a microphone and get your comment on anything we've discussed thus far.
Please don't comment on the University Jazz Choir in 1994 and the tenor section particularly.
Well, thank you, panelists. I've enjoyed the wisdom from the table, shall we say.
From the middle of the table.
I think I'd like to address the issue of gender disparity in choirs. It has always been with us. It will continue to be with us. And I think I'd like to suggest that the glass is half full rather than half empty. And I have maybe evidence insofar as the last Choral Fest that happened, and for people that don't know Choral Fest, it is a non-competitive choral festival hosted by Choir Alberta. This was held in 2019. 2020 it was cancelled, 2021 it was cancelled. In 2019, it showed that the health of the choral population in Calgary and in southern Alberta is extremely good. And we're talking about high school choirs, we're talking about youth choirs, we're talking about all kinds of choirs exhibiting their skill and prowess. And I added up all the choirs over Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It is an immense number of young people in this city who are singing. So having said that, I think that having said that gender disparity will always be with us, there are other reasons why boys, males, or whatever, don't join choirs. I think one of them is the fact that there is a different music curriculum starts at 3:30 when they exit the school doors. And even if there is let's say, a fine music program in the school, if it's a 1,000 pupil high school, maybe 150 are in the music program. 850 are left to something called pop culture, which isn't really a culture at all. So, of those 150, they're a small minority in the general societal mass. I missed out one point with regard to the numbers. Let's say you have 50 sopranos and altos. You don't need 50 tenors and basses to balance this. 15 or 16 tenors or basses, if they've been reasonably well prepared, will balance those women.
It's a big if.
Unless it's under the right guidance,
Yeah,
Ken.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I think that the idea of having equal numbers is a myth. I think that males, when I mentioned the fact that the new music curriculum starts at 3:30 when they put their earbuds in their ears for the next 6 hours, that is a far more potent music curriculum than what they have heard in school. Males, and again, this was brought up by the panelists. Yes, risk, daring. What rites of passage are there for adolescent males in this present society? Get a driver's license. That's daring. Graduate from high school. Think about what primitive tribes did. They sent them out into the forest for a week and asked them to kill pigs or something. We give them a driver's license. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm.
You said something there that I was thinking about something and I wasn't sure if it fit, but it does now. So I think about what was our first exposure to music, and lots of young folks now, I think they're more exposed to pop things than anything else. But I know mine was based in church. So being raised a Catholic and, being in choir and doing those things was my first exposure to voices that blended together. And I haven't been practicing the faith in many, many years, but every now and then I say to my husband, I kind of like to go back to church. And his response is always, why? And my response has always been the music and the community. Those are the two things I miss most, because my faith I practice through my daily things that I do. I am much more spiritual with nature, with mountains, with things like that. But learning that within a church system, strangely enough, I had a very good experience. I think, generally speaking, being one of the priests was one of my favorite people. My son is named after him. And for me, the choral side of that and the singing stayed very strong. And in my time, and I'm a little older than everybody else on this panel, in my time, the boys had a more predominant role in many of the songs because there was the Gregorian chants, there was the monk choirs, there was things like that had a lot of power. And our kids, most of us nowadays, there's less faith-based things, so we don't get exposed to different music. I found, again, I'll go back to all those kids I had, and one of the big things we did is the Disney movies were so popular. And so we had every Disney movie, and they all have music in them, depending upon which ones. And that became our exposure to what it could look like. Now, you had the same female person singing in all the movies, but you learned that the power of voice in comedy, the power of voice, I think of Timon and Pumbaa in The Lion King. I mean, my son is 31. That's still his favorite movie. When we went to see theater in England, what did he say? He said, I want to go to a matinee and see The Lion King. He was 27.
So with that in mind, I think I challenge the choirs that are watching and listening here to go where the people are. Pop culture, yeah, it can be den of iniquity. However, if they're all on TikTok, how could the choral community in Calgary get together? You can't all have a Lauren, a social media expert there, but how could the choral community that you've seen rising up and being heard, how could they harness some of these new tools? TikTok is insanely powerful. I don't get it. but I respect it because of what it can do. It can topple governments. It can do things.
And it's sure pulling performances out of people.
Absolutely.
Right? It's giving them a platform. It's giving them a stage to explore a lot of this stuff.
So yeah, how could you use it as an attraction tool? What does that look like? How might we?
To Malcolm's point, I mean, pop culture is where everybody's living, where everybody's singing. These are all the lyrics they know. Why don't we incorporate a little bit of that in as the hook, and then we give them JL's wonderful, complicated and intricate repertoire selections, so we can dig down and challenge ourselves that way. And I think that's how we hook. And that's how we keep and grow. Because once we've all been in those trenches together, once we've all accomplished building something like that together, that's addictive.
Well, and I think some of this is part of the ethos of Youth Singers of Calgary, and what Shirley Penner did was to have so many different kinds of music available for young people to sing that they, could find themselves and they could see themselves in some of the kinds of music, and then there you go, now you're learning something really difficult in choral, and trying out new ways to sing. Here also at Youth Singers, about a month and a half ago, we were very privileged to have Cheryl Sweepagaham, who's a Cree educator and singer-songwriter, come and work with our staff. And so we learned, many of us learned protocols around how to sing Blackfoot and Cree music, that she had written some of it, and we also learned a few community songs. And I was struck by what you were saying, JL, about the nasal. And we were very hesitant as she was singing more of the vocalables, that not really words, but the kind of way, hey, you can imagine. We're all sitting back like, is that for us? Should we be making those sounds? And she pulled it out of us. It was like, yes, this is how this music is sung. This is what it's about. This is what you should be engaging in. And it was very destabilizing in some ways, and just also transformational in a lot of others. So I think that we have many, options and opportunities to start really challenging what we think of it as music. And
Exactly, and that fearlessness that Jean-Louis was talking about too. I can remember, the excitement of learning a little bit of German, learning a little bit of Italian, learning a little bit of, all of these other languages that we would sing, bringing these ancient languages to life, and then singing something contemporary, and just, flipping the page on that and having that type of excitement. Again, moving into, other types of art forms, other tonal placements. I mean, that's pretty exciting stuff.
Can I say one more thing that hasn't come up, and I'm actually a bit surprised it hasn't come up, but remember I told you that I was sitting outside the high school choir room while my buddy was inside? Here's how it actually, I wasn't desperate to see my friend over lunch hour. The teacher came out and said, these were her exact words, Bonnie Jean Marconi, you probably know, some of you might know her.
Yes, I do.
She said this, she said, Ken and Bruce, who is the other friend of ours, who were still pals, behind that door, there are 86 women and 8 men. Do the math. She was a math teacher too. And I went, let's join the choir. I mean, you have to, at a particular age, whatever, you want to meet somebody. You want to meet that special person. You want to meet the next person, whatever that looks like for you. But community creates possibilities. There are 4 guys in the heebie-jeebies, and we are all married because we met our wives through music. That is shocking for the 4 guys that are in this band, let me tell you.
That's right.
And you all married up, I'm just saying.
We did all marry up. Thank you, Karen, for pointing that out.
It sounds silly, but put that in the window, that you can actually travel and have relationships and all of the amazing things that come. That's harder to do on a hockey team, I tell you. So.
Yeah, and music is the language of love, right? When you're talking about that. And
tell us more, Mitch.
Well, yeah.
I do not have a girlfriend. I'm sorry. I'm single.
Oh,
he's available. Call in now.
Subscribe down below.
Come see him in Kensington.
He'll be in Kensington tomorrow night.
You mentioned something about learning the different languages too, and that's something I found. So I did not do Math 30 because I sucked at math. I managed to do pure French instead. And I remember someone saying to me at some point, you realize that math and languages are very connected. And I'm like, no, they're not. They're completely different. I don't do math. I can do arithmetic, but I don't do math. And they said, no, there's a whole huge correlation in how it forms in your brain. And I was like, huh. And then I started thinking about how the ears are trained and what you can hear. And I've discovered that because I have some musical training, not a lot, but some, I'm really good at mimicking. I'm really good at languages. I pick things up quickly. And so that's added another dimension to my career. I haven't forgotten my French. Even though most people do, I haven't forgotten that. I still use it sometimes. I speak a little German, and lots of those things came out of not just where I lived and experiences, but came about my exposure to music and what that looked like. Going to an opera in German was absolutely terrifying for me because it's so guttural. But when I went to my first Italian opera, it was just like, oh my God, I was 10.
See, romantic languages.
Yeah.
We're back to that.
Ich liebe dich doesn't sound as nice as je
Liebe
t'aime.
dich.
Just
Especially
saying.
if you're really close.
Yeah, ich liebe dich.
This is shifting completely
Yeah,
away from
great.
this topic,
Yeah.
but the idea of cultural appropriation in music, especially choral music, is something that I think Choir Alberta is going to be addressing because there's this push-pull between engaging music by BIPOC people, but then also predominantly white choirs engaging music from other cultures. And there's a way to approach that. And as somebody who part of the repertoire that I select is I see it as a doorway to other cultures and understanding, but you have to approach that with care. And I believe Choir Alberta is going to be doing a talk about that, which I would encourage people to do because it's becoming more difficult to engage cultural music today than it was about 8-10 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to jump
Yeah.
off that slightly different angle, but you talk about engaging with cultures. Once again, another challenge to throw out to the choral community. How many times a year do you do a performance of any kind east of the Deerfoot here in our city? There is an amazing world. The Genesis Center, I'll put a plug in for that amazing community up there that is just chock full of all sorts of interesting people, many of them new Canadians from all over the world. They're not hearing you because you're at the Jube.
Nice.
No offense.
Hey.
But
Bella,
you
don't
know,
leave me
you're
out.
at the Bella. These are
Nice.
wonderful places. But I got a call from a choir recently when I was working at the Y saying, hey, can we use a couple of your facilities? And they wanted to use the facilities in the Northwest and in the Southeast. And that's lovely. But I'm like, please ask to go to the Saddletown Y. Because you're going to see, and they're going to see, a whole different scope of people that maybe you want to be brave on.
Yes,
Go, show up. Somebody will go, hey, that's for me.
yes.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I think that's a really important reminder. We can't be saying that we want to find out where the people are and we're not going where the people are. So both the social media aspect and then looking at the full borders of our city and who's here and who's ready to sing. We might be very pleasantly surprised. So we are at 7:30, and I'm hoping to get a few questions from our people here as well as anybody online before half of us need to go to our choir rehearsal.
And Mitch has a gig.
Tomorrow,
All right, tomorrow.
Ken,
What time?
What time?
5 o'clock, 5 to 8.
5 to 8. See you there.
Be there. Kensington.
You can hit the wine market.
Wonderful. Anyone here with us today have something to ask or something to add, an idea, a wondering, a noticing? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to add to the, I think you mentioned the influence of church music upon your developing taste.
Yes.
I think that we all know that this is now extremely rare.
Yeah.
We live in a very secular society. But I think here's another way of looking at that. I think that choirs can, even if they're not singing sacred music, put their singers in touch
Yes.
with the sacred.
Yes.
And I think that if I say sacred, I really mean, let's say, deep meaning.
Yeah.
And I think that this is absolutely crucial for adolescents, 20-somethings, 30-somethings, because we do have a lot of people wandering around this society with no meaning in their lives whatsoever.
Yes.
And I think we do a great service when, in fact, we articulate this and we say, look, this piece of music has such deep meaning for me. And I think they're quite amazed at it means something to him. Then what is it about this piece of music that is so entrancing?
Malcolm, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was on a conference and I was in the city of New Orleans. The heebie-jeebies have been privileged to play there 4 or 5 times. It is an amazing music city. And I went to the New Orleans Music and Heritage Festival, which is this massive festival. And, it's, if you can ever get down there, please do. Every kind of music you can find. But I found myself parked, and literally parked for 6 hours in the gospel tent. I couldn't pull myself away. The harmonies were infectious. The energy was just exploding through that tent. And I missed Rod Stewart to stay in that tent, Jonathan.
Hallelujah.
But I think you're right. I'm not a Baptist, but man, what a sacred experience that was.
If I could jump on that with 2 quick points. One of them is that New Orleans taught us that music is a universal language, and if you have it, you are welcome.
Yeah.
We were invited on so many stages. We shared music with people in the streets. It was just such a wonderful sort of personal renaissance and spiritual awakening to the power of music and all types of music when we went there. I was saying to the panel earlier, Malcolm, sort of to your point, I always consider performance, or my wife and I talk about my performance with the heebie-jeebies as my own yoga practice. Where there's something where when you're out there without a safety net, you are present and in the moment. There is nothing else that you can do but connect with what you're singing, what it means to you, and what you're trying to impart to an audience with it. That puts you in that present moment, that grounds you in a different way than anything. And I think that's the closest thing to sort of a spiritual practice personally that I keep, and it makes music sacred for me.
You plank a lot of notes as well. So
yeah, it's very true.
I want to put a plug in when when I'm talking about eclectic music, Renaissance music, and that goes to what Malcolm was saying. And when you said Renaissance, adding a piece from the Renaissance in there is a transcendent experience, and it's a new sound for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I just wanted we had a question online that tied in with physicality around singing, and you're talking about your singing as yoga. If any of us could speak to the physicality of singing, so I imagine the posture, the breathing, the openness, as well as how that would have an effect on mental health. So I'm sure, Mitch, you can probably speak to the physicality.
Yeah, I mean, every person in a choir has to go through the sit up straight, stand up straight.
That's right.
Posture moment, and it's not just that. Obviously, in the music that I do now, I'm not gonna go like this, singing my folk music with my guitar. I can't do that. But there's something about that posture tied in with the music that makes it almost therapeutic. The breathing is almost the same, and yeah, it's kind of a cool thing for the body to experience that with the music itself.
I think I would agree, and I go with the mental health side. So what you said about yoga, what you've said about the physicality. So anyone who's coming for maybe their own recovery journey with mental health, one of the things that we need to do is connect with ourselves. And lots of people struggle with that. I still struggle with that. And then part of that is learning to be quiet and learning to be in a quiet space. And I find that music takes me there. I can use music. I cannot meditate. I can't shut my brain down. I can't do that. But what I can do is find the right music that can change my mood, that can change everything. On the weekend, I was involved with a hackathon. It was quite fascinating, from the University of Calgary, and it was sponsored by
Is that why my computer doesn't work now?
Maybe.
Or is it? I think it's a hacky sack thing.
Oh, right.
Slightly different.
Yeah.
And there was about 18 teams of students from faculty of, something to do with computers at UC. And they had 24 hours to create something on the tech world to help with mental health. And there was one idea that came out that they won second place, and it blew me away. And their idea was something they called it Musik. And so mood and music, it was Musik. And their idea was an app that could connect you. If you were in a particular mood, it would take a picture of your face, and then it would take that and incorporate it in, and it would pull from your Spotify list. music that matched what you were
That
doing. And
movie,
I was like,
That's brilliant.
That
it
is
was
brilliant.
brilliant because, and so I started asking questions about, well, what if you wanted to, obviously we can pick an uplifting one if we're sad or whatever. And they said, well, we see it as you can transition it all these ways. These kids came up within 24 hours. Wow. And all I could think was how effective that is with mental health when you are trying to alter your mood. I don't walk alone with my dog without my earbuds in, and I choose the music for the mental need.
And how many people here do that?
Yeah.
How many people have their pump up mix? How
Yeah.
many people have their, I'm feeling a little low.
Yeah.
We
You
do
know?
that as a band.
Yes.
We will read an audience and go, okay, we know where they need to be. Maybe we'll keep them there for a little bit by the choices we make in the repertoire. Or maybe we'll take them to another place that they didn't expect to go. There's that conga line thing. We've seen Margaret Atwood do a conga line, people. She
It
was
was-
leading it.
Yeah, it was scary.
Thanks to the heebie-jeebies. No, but it's like a conductor. You can mold the audience. And that's awesome. That's power. Who doesn't like a little power?
It's a journey.
It is.
Great. I know for me, singing, like there's the breathing, there's the posture, there's all that, but just making the sound waves through your mask and through your body, I mean, it's really
There's something about the resonance.
gets the, yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and it gets your endocrine system going, and it, regulates your emotions, and it's just, a really, really powerful activity.
That's why everybody owns in yoga.
And it is.
That is true,
It is.
actually. Yeah,
It's true.
That's the thing.
Well, and I think in your brain, you have to think about the chemical releases that happen, right? So when we're stressed, certain chemicals are released. When we're calm, certain chemicals are released. And depending on your choice of music. So if I'm doing AC/DC, I want that, pump it up.
That's
But if
exactly
if
it.
I'm more interested in something pulling me down, I might go pop, but I might also go something, I won't say I'll go Renaissance, but I might go something a little more Gregorian chant.
will now.
Because it takes me there. I haven't been exposed enough, so maybe I need to be exposed. But I go for something like that just calms me right down to the point where it will put me to sleep at times.
Absolutely.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Not like
Totally.
you guys.
Yeah, we've put you to sleep in a different way.
Audience,
do that.
are there more people here with a comment or a wondering? Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for your story about having to choose between your sporting event and your choir event, because I think that's the challenge that a lot of youth have today, especially those that are involved in the arts. And I think the challenge comes from the way that our youth activities have been created in our society, where you're supposed to be only sporty or artsy, or STEM or arts. And I'm wondering how we can support the children and youth that are involved in our arts organizations to be able to juggle that more appropriately, that there might be something
I
in
have a
there.
thought.
Yeah.
Start with the coaches, not the choral directors.
What
Start with the
happened
coaches.
to the Renaissance man, the Renaissance
Well, hold on.
person, right?
So when I was in grade 9 and just starting to think about music, me and Chris, we were in high school together. We became friends because we were cut from the grade 7 volleyball team. Mitch, you could have taught us something. That's literally, and we thought, oh God, what are we going to do now? So we started a pep band. You know what a pep band was at St. Matthew's School in 1984? Me on snare drum and him on euphonium. Amazing.
And
we
a
didn't-
pom-pom.
That's right. We didn't get bullied because we were fun at the tournaments. But here's what I wanted to say. Mr. Nero, grade 9, our grade 9 teacher, as jockey as it gets, he was the phys ed teacher. He was the jock's jock. But he pulled us aside and he said, you guys, you're really musical. We loved your little pep band. You guys are going to do amazing things together. And he sanctioned it. What if every coach in every school in the city said, hey, that choir is cool and it's as important as the game that you're playing next Thursday? What if we had some allies on that side of things? It's not just the choir director going, over here. We need some allies. And I think educators, they're educators. They want that success for kids. And so maybe there's an ally group that you can approach. Not all of them will get it, but a lot of them will.
But they shifted and they get things like why dance is good for someone that plays basketball.
Yep.
So they've shifted and started to see why arts can correlate with the physicality and everything that you need to perform. I think there's some of that there that's really critical. There's an audience, I think, when I think about the school environment, I often think about not so much the clubs or those separate groups, But the places where everybody comes together, so whether it's the, the school auditorium for the mandatory whatever, and there's chances there to bring, I think, young people up and say, let's bring some of this in. Every bit as much as you celebrate the athletes that won, district whatever,
Right.
but it's bringing forward the performers and the people that are participating in this and celebrating them in a different way. And I don't think we do that enough either. It's not an equal stage, just like women's athletics, we're not an equal stage, they're still not. But I think there's not an equality to the performing arts of any sort within our school systems.
Who's the
And-
quarterback of the choir? We don't celebrate them, maybe we should.
Yeah, there's good there's research showing how music education can benefit other academic areas.
One thing that I think we need to acknowledge is that children today, at least from my perspective of working as director of Mount Royal, are so much more busier than
I was gonna
they
say the
ever have
same
been.
thing.
And I think that's a challenge to mental health because there is so much pressure on young people to go to their swimming lessons, to go to their violin lessons, to join the orchestra, to do whatever they have. Like these are the people, the kids that are part of the conservatory. And it is stressful for young people. And I think that's a significant challenge. It's also probably one of the reasons why when people have to make a choice, when young people have to make a choice, they sometimes make the choices that they do.
Well, and it's always such a definitive choice because everyone's competing for a limited amount of time, right? Mitch is an anomaly. I had to walk off the rugby field when I got cast in a school play because you can't do both at the level, at that stage of life too. And that's the difficult part because that's the stage of life, especially young men who are going through these adolescent changes need to, find their people.
And they need to find their identity.
Need to find their identity as well, that's right.
Maybe what we should say is that for that kid who's getting their driver's license, if you sing in the car, I'll buy you one.
Nice.
Okay, thanks, Ken. My son will be.
That's perfect.
I'm being flippant, but
Sorry, Mitch, what were you going to say?
I was going to tie like what you were saying back into the identity. You ask a 13-year-old who they are, what they want to do, they're going to have no idea. You can ask me, I still have no idea.
I don't either, man.
Still working on that.
But I know I love music, and I know I also love sport. So until they try both, or until they experience that, they're not gonna know. And like you're obviously gonna have these outside pressures no matter what you do. Like some people aren't gonna want you to play sport. Some people aren't gonna want you to do music, but you got to try it to figure out who you are and who your people are, because that's the most important thing.
Well put. The other thing that's a bit of an elephant in the room is just the fact that these arts programs are being cut in schools.
100%.
So not everybody is getting the same type of exposure at an early age to hook on and be excited about it and have it part of their daily routines, to make it normal, to make it exciting. And that's why it's so important that we have organizations like the Youth Singers and all of the conservatory groups to foster these types of passions and give people an outlet for that. And it's unfortunate that it's not societally accepted and promoted in schools.
So and a medium-term goal for Youth Singers too is to build capacity in the teachers who are, being left, grade 2, 3 teachers being left to teach music. And they're like, what? I took a course with Malcolm when I was doing my Bachelor of Education for teachers, not music specialists, but just for teachers to learn how to teach music. And it was fantastic. I learned so much already with the music background, but very accessible. There's some great resources. So that is a sort of medium term of Youth Singers as well. I do want to be mindful of the time and wonder if we have any other comment or question from the audience. Yeah, no problem. And yes, Act 3, you're welcome to go to your rehearsal. Please.
Thank you, Act 3.
Thank you guys so much for being here today. And
I couldn't help be interested in the relationship between the music teacher and the athletic director, the coach or whatever. There used to be a choral music teacher here in Calgary called Marilyn Perkins. She was at Viscount Bennett. And over her dynasty at Viscount Bennett, she drove the school bus every Friday night for the football team. That's how she had an amazing men's section. Wow. The other thing that she talked about was that she walked down the hallway and literally pigeonholed boys who she knew were leaders in the school, and she said to them, Tom, nobody's ever asked you this before, but I'm going to invite you to be a part of my class.
Yes.
Nobody, no teacher does that. Math teachers don't do that because everybody has to show up anyway. But choral music teachers need to actually make a special invitation and make that kid feel somewhat out of the ordinary.
Do you know why I'm smiling? I'm smiling because you won't remember this, but I do. 30 years ago almost, you did that for me. I wasn't in the music program at the University of Calgary. I was just hanging out there because my friends were all in it. I was in communications. But somewhere along the way, you figured out that I had maybe a little bit of a tenor voice, and you invited me to be a part of your jazz choir. Do you remember that? Because I do.
No.
I'm glad I was so memorable. But you're absolutely right. You know, there has to be an active, proactive role. And yeah, people want to be invited. It's philanthropy is the same. You won't give to a cause unless you're asked.
Exactly.
Let's start asking.
The
Thanks,
other,
by the way. That was awesome that you did that.
the other, the big, let's say, universal problem is, it's been mentioned around the table. Somebody made the comment that people are actually proud to say, oh, I can't carry a tune in a bucket. They actually say that. What they're actually saying, if you decode it, is, I never had those early experiences in school, in kindergarten, grade 1 or grade 2, or with my mother and father singing to me, that enabled me to make those neuron connections in my head, which then brings about pitch consciousness. And the depressing thing is that all you have to do is to listen to a group of Canadian adults in Earls try to sing Happy Birthday. Which is one of the most simplest constructions in music. And then you wonder about the state of our musical culture.
And with that,
Eat at Moxie's. All right.
So I've got Let's Start Asking. Go where they are. Go on TikTok. Go to other parts of the city. I've got sort of a consensus that music and group singing is very positive for men's mental health. It can be a way out of social isolation. It can be a way to connect with themselves and their emotion, as well as build communities. It can be good for deep meaning, as well as careers, and opens up many, many pathways for different opportunities, building all kinds of an array of skills. And that it's just overall positive for children's learning as well.
I have one more idea.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
Can I throw one more idea?
Let's get it going.
The idea is, every high school in Calgary, high school teachers, if you're listening, do a day without music at your school. Consciously say, nobody can engage with music today. Force them, take their earbuds out. And then say, how did that feel? Join the choir.
What I want to add to that, Megan, is just, and here we are literally preaching to the choir. Thank you. Is that it's fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that message needs to be sent out as well. It's challenging, it's rewarding, it's, soul searching, it's difficult, it's, freak you out. It can be fearless if done with Jean-Louis, but there's a lot of fun to be had to it. And at the end of the day, if everyone could experience the fun that has been had in choral groups, in music groups, in youth groups of these types of these types of organizations that we all have, it'd be a no-brainer. They'd be joining.
Yeah. The other comment I've written down here is to look at your repertoire. Choral directors, start with your repertoire and look, are you giving men and boys a challenge? Are you giving them a risk? Are you giving them something physical to engage with? And then someone said it, I don't know who, you have risk and danger all in a safe place,
Yeah.
which is like amazing. And it's true, that choral stage, you've got, you're friends with you and you're supported.
And there's 86 girls behind that door.
So wonderful. Any further comments from online or from the house?
The conversation online has been incredible.
Oh, wonderful.
So I think that all the chat, does the chat stay up after the live ends?
Yeah, you can revisit the chat.
Yeah, so I would encourage you guys to go look. The Grand Prairie Boys Choir, Mitchel's choir was...
Yeah, represent.
There was just some really wonderful conversation, so I to go take a look at that. And Facebook as well.
How many people were online?
The choirs were.
Probably about 30 to 40, like at the height of it, between Facebook and YouTube.
How many identify as tenors or basses?
I'd like to thank the youth singers for doing this.
Yeah.
I had so many people reach out and say, what a great idea. I'm so glad we're talking about this. It just takes somebody to say, hey, we got to fix this. Now let's fix it. So all the communities of choirs that are listening or engaging or whoever those people are representing, they're here for a reason. It's fixable. It's just somebody has to take the first step, and you did.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, was certainly the support of Park Group here, as well as all of you guys agreeing, and Ken, you connected us with the right people, so thank you. And we do hope to continue this conversation next November. So hopefully maybe we can get together more of the choirs in Calgary and start a TikTok channel in the meantime. Pool our resources. Catherine, you don't look... But yeah, thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of your evening. Keep singing. Encourage everyone you know to keep singing and join a choir. And take care. Be safe.
Except you, John. Stop singing.
That's it for me, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
In any other world, you could tell the difference. And let it all unfurl into broken remnants. Smile like you mean it, and let yourself let go. Take a bow of a lonely, lonely heart. Say goodbye to the world you thought you lived in, to the world you thought you lived in. I try to live alone, but lonely is so lonely alone. So human as I am, I had to give up my defenses. So I smiled and tried to meet it, to let myself